Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Ches, Daf 58 of Masechta Pesachim. Super interesting, I think. We begin sort of the second half of Masechta Pesachim, and it's the perek of Tamid Nishchat that discusses the korban tamid in the Beis Hamikdash. Of course, every day in the Beis Hamikdash there was one, right? Sakeves echad tasav aboker v'sakeves hasheni taiseh ben arbaim. Then you bring one sheep in the morning, that is the morning offering, and one in the afternoon. There are no offerings brought before the morning offering, no offerings brought after the afternoon offering. All the offerings in the Beis Hamikdash were done in between those two offerings. And so our Mishnah discusses what time would you offer the afternoon offering, and what are the nafkaminas if it's Pesach, if Pesach is during the week, if it's on a Friday, if it's on a Shabbos, those kind of things may be reminiscent to the Gemaras and Brachos in the fourth perek, which discussed the korbanos as well, and how that ties into tefillos, davening. Then we get into a three-way machlokas between Abai, Rava, and Rabba Bar Ula about what time you offer the korban tamid shabin arbaim, the afternoon tamid, when Erev Shabbos, Erev Pesach is on Shabbos. And at the end, we get into just very quickly the source for how we know that no korban comes before the tamid shel shachar, the morning tamid, and no korban comes after the tamid shel ben arbaim, the afternoon tamid. We're going to start on Daf Nun Ches Amud Aleph, all the way at the top. New perek, new Mishnah. Tamid nishchat b'shmona v'mechza v'karev b'teisha v'mechza. So the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 8.5 hours into the day, and it is offered at 9.5 hours into the day. Okay, so of course noon being at 6 hours, so then 2.5 hours later is when you slaughter this afternoon offering, and then 1 hour after that is when it would be offered at 9.5 hours by Pesachim. Now, on Erev Pesach, when after the korban tamid, you also need to have time to do the korban Pesach and slaughter the korban Pesach. Now, we had just said a minute ago that there's no offerings that are offered after the tamid shel ben arbaim. As a general rule, that is correct. We're going to learn out, I believe, tomorrow that the korban Pesach, however, would be offered after the korban tamid. So now in Erev Pesach, when after you're done with the tamid shel ben arbaim, you still have to have time to slaughter the korban Pesach. So then nishchat b'sheva v'mechza v'karev b'shmona v'mechza. So the afternoon offering was bumped up an hour. It was slaughtered at 7.5 hours in the day and offered at 8.5 hours into the day. Bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbos. Now, this is whether Erev Pesach is Monday or Erev Pesach is a Shabbos. It makes no difference. And when it's Erev Pesach, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day, and you offer it at 8.5 hours. Chol Erev Pesach lios be'Erev Shabbos. However, the one exception being that if Erev Pesach is, I don't know what I said, but Erev Shabbos, right? If Erev Pesach is on Erev Shabbos, is on a Friday, which is a very busy day, because you have to do the tamid shel ben arbaim, and you also have to do the korban Pesach, and you also have to roast the korban Pesach before Shabbos starts. So in that case, nishchat b'sheish v'mechza, the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 6.5 hours into the day, v'karev b'sheva v'mechza, and it is offered at 7.5 hours into the day, v'pesach acharav, and then the korban Pesach comes after that, and then of course, you would roast it before Shabbos begins as well. Okay, fine. So we see that on a regular day, the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 8.5 hours into the day and offered at 9.5 hours into the day on Erev Pesach. Because we also have to offer the korban Pesach, we bump it up an hour, and it is slaughtered at 7.5 hours into the day and offered at 8.5 hours into the day. Now, if Erev Pesach is on Friday, so then you would even bump it up to 6.5 hours into the day, so that, and then offer it at 7.5 hours into the day, and then you have the korban Pesach, and also roasting the korban Pesach. That also needs to get done on that Friday afternoon. It says the Gemara, how do we know that the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 8.5 hours into the day and offered at 9.5 hours into the day. So says the Gemara, Amr Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi da Amar Kra. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that the pasuk says. Now it's interesting because in Masechta Brachos, in the 4th perek, we had the question of Tfilos Keneged Avos Tiknum or Tfilos Keneged Tmidim Tiknum. Do we pray because the fathers prayed, or do we pray because we have korbanos at that time? And right, it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's opinion, who says that we pray that our prayers line up with the times of the korbanos, and we see him also giving his opinion over here on what time those korbanos were offered, which is interesting. So, Amr B'Yeshua ben Levi da Amar Kra, well, the pasuk says, okay, so one sheep you're going to offer in the morning, that's the morning offering. And the second offering, the second sheep you're going to offer, it doesn't just say in the afternoon, it says between the evenings. What are these evenings? What are these plural evenings that you're offering it in between? So, so you're going to take the afternoon and divide it into 2 afternoons. Treat it as 2 distinct parts. So the way that it works is, well, it takes an hour for you to prepare the offering. So from the time that it's slaughtered until the time that it's offered, it takes an hour. So if we have 6 hours of the afternoon, because of course, as we learned in Gemara Brachos, we have this concept of Shaos Manios. Was it even the first daf of, maybe even been the first daf of Brachos, or maybe the second? But anyways, we have this concept of Shaos Manios, which means that we always treat it as if the night is 12 hours and the day is 12 hours, and you just divide those up. So on longer days, each hour is longer than an hour, and on shorter days, each hour is shorter than an hour. Okay. Now, so, therefore, if we assume that the entire day is 12 hours, the morning is 6 hours, the afternoon is 6 hours, and now we know that it takes an hour to process the afternoon offering. So, 6 minus 1 is 5. You have 5 hours left in the afternoon. Divide that in 2. That's 2.5 hours. So basically, you could divide up the afternoon in the following way. 2.5 hours, 1 hour to process the afternoon offering, and then complete the afternoon with another 2.5 hours. So basically, so noon would be at 6 hours into the day, 2.5 hours later is 8.5 hours into the day. It takes an hour to process the korban tamid shel bein arbaim until 9.5 hours into the day, and then you have the final 2.5 hours of the day remaining. So we learn that out from bein ha'arbaim, right? That between the afternoons, right? Chalkeu lebeis levein shnei aravim. So divide the afternoon into 2 afternoons, so to speak. Beis shalos v'mechza lechan, shtei shalos v'mechza lechan. So you have the first 2.5 hours of the afternoon, you have the last 2.5 hours of the afternoon, v'sha'achas la'asiyaso, then you have 1 hour in the middle where you would slaughter and prepare the afternoon offering. Masav Rava asks a question on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, which is also interesting because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was super early. And actually I was learning with a friend of mine the other day, and he pointed out that actually the last Mishnah in all of Shas, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is in that Mishnah. So very interesting. So I wonder why, but certainly he was a very early Amora. Why is he in a Mishnah? I don't know. But he was very early. Rava was a later Amora. So interesting that he would, but then again, he wasn't necessarily arguing on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. I guess he's asking a question on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. But still, then he gives, because of it, he gives an alternative answer. So it's interesting that Rava is going to kind of jump in here. But we also do see that Rava is kind of fearless, right? We had a Gemara, I think on Daf Kuf Lamed Vav of Masechta Shabbos, where Rava argued on Rav Yehuda, who wasn't quite as early as Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, but he was early. And then he got a little bit sick, and he says, why do I even, get starting up with the earlier generations? But anyway, so we see over here also Rava asking a question on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So Masav Rava asked the kasha by Pesachim, Nishchat b'sheva v'mechza v'kay b'shmona v'mechza. Bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbos. So our Mishnah had said that on Erev Pesach, the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 7.5 hours into the day and offered at 8.5 hours into the day. So now, Bein b'chol bein b'Shabbos. This is whether it's during the week or whether on Shabbos. Now, Bisal Kadaitech b'shmona v'mechza deoraisa. Now, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, if you're saying that we offer the korban tamid shel bein arbaim, the afternoon offering, we slaughter it at 8.5 hours and offer it at 9.5 hours because we have a pasuk in the Torah, because it's midoraisa, because it says bein arbaim. Well, then how can we bump it up on Erev Pesach just so that we can have time for the korban Pesach? I mean, it's what's called a low plug. There's no exceptions. If the Torah says you have to offer it, slaughter it at 8.5 and offer it at 9.5, I don't care that there's a lot to do on Erev Pesach. That's non-negotiable. You can't just bump it up an hour. So rather Rava says, mitzvasu de tamid mishayinot utzil le'erev. So rather, says Rava, no. The mitzvah of the afternoon offering is any time in the afternoon. Mishayinot utzil le'erev. From the time that already the rays of the sun start going towards the west. And that would be at 6.5 hours into the day. The assumption is that from 5.5 hours into the day until 6.5 hours into the day, the sun is directly above. From 6.5 hours, it starts going towards the west. So, and at that point already, you would be allowed to offer the afternoon offering. My timer. How come Rava says this? Because the pasuk says bein arbaim me'idna demaskal shimsha lema'ariv. So it says like between the Erevs. So from the time that the sun starts going towards the Ma'arav, to the west. Okay, fine. So it says Rava, you can really offer the Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim, the afternoon offering, as early as possible, from 6.5 hours into the day. Okay. Hilka. Now, on a regular day of the year, where it's busy in the Beis HaMikdash, people come to Jerusalem and they offer voluntary korbanos, they offer nidarim, nidavos. So now, as we mentioned earlier, you don't offer any korbanos after the afternoon offering. So while technically you can already offer the afternoon offering at 12:30, at 6.5 hours into the day, but once you do that, then you can't offer anything else. And therefore, during a regular day where there are nidarim, nidavos, there are voluntary offerings, there are all sorts of things that are going to be offered on the mizbeach. So we push off the afternoon offering until later. As we're going to learn at the end of the daf today, that you would put upon the korban tamid shel shachar, upon the morning offering, you would offer all of the other offerings. We said that you need to do all of the korbanos after the morning offering, implication being, but not after the afternoon offering. So, because we need to basically do all of the other offerings that we're going to offer before the afternoon offering, so then we push off the afternoon offering 2 hours, and we slaughter it at 8.5 hours into the day. However, on Erev Pesach, where in addition to the afternoon offering, we also need to have enough time for the Korban Pesach, so then, so we bump it up an hour, and we do the Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim, the afternoon offering, at 7.5 hours into the day. We slaughtered at 7.5 hours into the day. We offered it 8.5 hours into the day. So we have an extra hour to work on the Korban Pesach. Now, if Erev Pesach is on a Friday, where in addition to the afternoon offering and the Pesach offering, you also need to roast the offering before Shabbos begins. There's also roasting the Korban Pesach, which does not override Shabbos, or does not push off Shabbos. So then we could say, you know what? Let's just establish it at its Ikar Adin time, at its principal time, which is 6.5 hours into the day. So when Erev Pesach falls out on Erev Shabbos on a Friday, where there's a lot to do, so then you can slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours into the day, offer it at 7.5 hours into the day, then you have enough time for the Korban Pesach, to slaughter it, to roast it, and everything like that. Okay, so that's the machlokas between Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and Rava. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that we learn out that the afternoon offering is slaughtered at 8.5 hours and offered at 9.5 hours from the fact that it says Bein Arbaim, divide the afternoon into two. So therefore 2.5 hours before, 2.5 hours afterwards, and 1 hour to process it. And Rava says, no, really, Maker Adin, you could already offer the afternoon offering from 6.5 hours into the day, but we push it off to 8.5 hours into the day so that there's more time to offer Nedarim and Nedavos. On Erev Pesach, where we also have to offer the Korban Pesach afterwards, we bump it up to 7.5 hours. And then when Erev Pesach is on Friday, where in addition to the Korban Pesach, we also have to roast the Korban Pesach. So, I don't know what I said, but if Erev Pesach is on Friday, so then we bump it up to 6.5 hours into the day, so you have enough time for everything. Okay, so now we get to machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Now, the brisa in which they argue is not particularly clear, which is what gives space for our three-way machlokas between Abaye, Rava, and Rabbi Bar Ula. Here we go. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kesidur b'chol kach sidur b'Shabbos tivra b'Shmuel. So the rabbis taught that just like you do it during the week, that's how you do it on Shabbos. That's Rabbi Yishmael's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva Kesidur be'erev Pesach, it's like on Erev Pesach. Now, my comment. The Gemara says, okay, yeah, it's clear that there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, but what exactly are they arguing about? So Amar Abaye, Halchi Kamer. So Abaye takes a stab at it, and he says, this is what the machlokas is. Kisidura b'chol be'erev Pesach. So just like on a weekday Erev Pesach, I don't know, let's say it's a Monday, and it's Erev Pesach, and you would offer the Korban Pesach at 7, you would slaughter it at 7.5 hours and offer it at 8.5 hours. Kach sidur b'Shabbos be'erev Pesach tibra b'Shmuel. So also, if Erev Pesach is on Shabbos, so you would slaughter the Korban Pesach at, no, I don't know what in the world I just said. It says Abaye that according to Rabbi Shmuel, just like during the week on Erev Pesach, you would offer the afternoon offering, you would slaughter it at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. So also, there's no difference when Erev Pesach is on a Shabbos, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and you offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva, Kisidua be'erev a-Pesach, shechalios be'erev Shabbos. So it says Rabbi Akiva, according to Abaye, that no. Let me just read for a second. Kach sidura b'Shabbos, period. That's also what happens on Shabbos. So, according to Rabbi Akiva, when Shabbos falls out on Erev Pesach, or when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, so then you would offer the afternoon offering at the same time that you would offer it when Erev Pesach falls out on a Friday, which is you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours into the day and offer it at 7.5 hours into the day. So, according to Abaye, Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, so basically Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva are arguing about what time do you slaughter and offer the afternoon offering when Erev Pesach is on Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel says 7.5 hours into the day, just like if Erev Pesach was any other day of the week. Rabbi Akiva says at 6.5 hours into the day, like when Erev Pesach is on a Friday. Now our Mishnah, which says that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day, whether Erev Pesach is during the week or on Shabbos, that is Rabbi Yishmael. Okay. So Masnisen, right, the Katani, Ben B'chol, Ben B'Shabbos, Rabbi Shmueli, our Mishnah, that makes no difference between the week and on Shabbos is Rabbi Shmuel, but my kamiflage. Now, what is the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel? How come Rabbi Akiva says that when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, Rabbi Akiva says that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours into the day and offer it at 7.5 hours into the day, and Rabbi Shmuel says you slaughter it at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day? So, the machlokas is that the korban musaf that you offer on Shabbos, does that come before the bazichin or after the bazichin? What are the bazichin? So in the Beis Hamikdash, there was the lechem apanim. There were those breads that they would make, as we learned about the other day. They'd make them on Erev Shabbos, and then they would kind of wait a week and then eat them the next Shabbos, and they stayed fresh. Now, so the lechem apanim were put into the shulchan. Now, on top of the shulchan, there were these two, my friend defined them the other day as ladles. Okay? So these two ladles that were filled with frankincense. And then on Shabbos, before they would eat the lechem apanim, they would take the frankincense from these ladles and they would burn them. Then afterwards they would eat them. Now, eat the lechem apanim. So now, every Shabbos, of course, if you go to shul, probably in your shuls, they pray musaf. So on every Shabbos there's a musaf offering. Now the musaf offering was offered at 6 hours into the day. So the question is, these bazichin, this frankincense, was it able to be offered and burnt before the korban musaf? Or do you first have to do the korban musaf and then the frankincense? So Rabbi Shmuel savar musaf and kodmin levazichin. So Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is that first comes the korban musaf and then comes the frankincense. So avadlu the musafin b'sheish. So the korban musaf is offered at 6 hours. Vazichin b'sheva. Then they would offer the frankincense. They would burn the frankincense at 7 hours into the day. And v'avadle the samad b'sheva v'mechza. And then the afternoon offering, they would be able to then slaughter at 7.5 hours into the day. That is why Rabbi Shmuel says that when Erev Pesach is on a Shabbos, so the earliest you can start working with the afternoon offering is 7.5 hours into the day, just because it wouldn't really be possible to do it before then, because before then you have to do the musaf and you have to do the bazichin. Rabbi Akiva savar bazichin kol min musafin, whereas Rabbi Akiva holds that you can offer the frankincense before the musaf, and therefore bazichin b'chamish, you can offer the frankincense at 5 hours into the day, umusafin b'sheish, and then you can offer the musaf at 6 hours into the day, and then the afternoon offering you could already get started with at 6.5 hours into the day, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. Now, in general, in the Beis Hamikdash, they would offer the afternoon offering on Shabbos at 8.5 hours into the day. Now, just like they do during the week, meaning they would slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day, offer it at 9.5 hours into the day on a Shabbos, just like any other day of the week. Now, that's even though there are no nedarim and nedavos, right? On Shabbos, nobody's bringing voluntary offerings in the Beis Hamikdash, only the deoraisas. So, meaning the Tam Shel Shachar, Tam Shel Ben Abayim, the Musafin, those things. Now, even though there are no nedarim and nedavos, still they stick to the regular time of slaughtering at 8.5 hours and offering at 9.5 hours, because they don't want to make exceptions and change around times, because it might get confusing during the week, you might mess up, whatever it is. However, when you have a reason for it, such as it's Erev Pesach, and you have to also slaughter the korban Pesach, and there's a lot to do, so then we say, look, the fact of the matter is, there's no nedarim and nedavos that we have to be offering, so let's push up the afternoon offering so that we have more time for the korban Pesach. So therefore, within that context, both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael are pushing up the afternoon offering as much as possible. The thing is, Rabbi Yishmael says, I can't go any earlier than 7.5 hours into the day, because at 6 hours I need to offer the musaf. At 7 hours I need to burn the frankincense. At 7.5 hours is really the earliest I can do for the afternoon offering. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says, no, you can actually burn the frankincense at 5 hours into the day, offer the musaf at 6 hours into the day, and then already slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours into the day, and you have plenty of time for the korban Pesach as well. Maskif la Rava. So now Rava has a kasha. This was all Abaye's opinion, right? So let's review what's Abaye's opinion. Abaye's opinion is that according to Rabbi Yishmael, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, and you offer it at 8.5 hours, just like any other Erev Pesach. Rabbi Akiva says that no, you bump up the afternoon offering to 6.5 hours into the day, and you slaughter it at 6.5, and the afternoon offering, you slaughter at 6.5 hours, and you offer it at 7.5 hours. It's a little bit confusing because there's so much. There's like the slaughtering time, the offering time, the afternoon offering, the Pesach offering. There's like so much going on. Then you have to remember if it's the weekday, if it's Friday, if it's Shabbos, is it Erev Pesach? Okay. Hopefully we're getting everything organized over here. So Maskef Rava. So Rava asked the kasha. Remember that brisa that quoted the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva wasn't particularly clear on what anybody was saying. So we're trying to decipher the brisa. So Maskef Rava asks a kasha on Abai's deciphering. He says, Midi Rabbi Akiva kisidro be'erev Pesach shechalios be'erev Shabbos katani. Says Rava, it doesn't say anywhere in that brisa all those details that you're saying, Abai, which is that kisidro be'erev Pesach shechalios be'erev Shabbos, that we treat Erev Pesach that falls out on Shabbos to be like Erev Pesach that falls out on Friday, and therefore Rabbi Akiva is saying that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours into the day and offer it at 7.5 hours into the day. It doesn't say that in that brisa. In that brisa, Rabbi Akiva says like 3 words. Kisidro be'erev Pesach. What is that? Like Erev Pesach. What is that? Where does that say anything about Erev Pesach that falls out on Friday? Right? Katani kisidro be'erev Pesach. Stama katani. Says like you offer the afternoon offering on any Erev Pesach. So Ella. Amar Rava. So here's Rava's opinion. Hachi Kamer. This is the machlokas. Kisidro b'chol de'alma. Kach sidro b'Shabbos be'erev Pesach to Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael's opinion is that when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you offer the afternoon offering at the same time that you offer the afternoon offering every other day, which is you slaughter it at 8.5 hours, you offer it at 9.5 hours. That's Rabbi Yishmael's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer says Rabbi Akiva Kisidro be'erev Pesach, that no, we offer the afternoon offering when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos at the same time that you would offer the afternoon offering on any Erev Pesach, i.e. at 7.5 hours into the day you slaughter it, at 8.5 hours into the day you offer it. Okay? And therefore, our Mishnah that says that that on Erev Pesach you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day, and that's whether Erev Pesach is a weekday or whether it's Shabbos, well, that's going to be Rabbi Akiva, who says just that, according to Rava, that when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. Now, Maika Miflige, what's the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? How come Rabbi Yishmael says that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day and offer it at 9.5 hours into the day? Rabbi Akiva says 7.5 hours into the day and 8.5 hours into the day, respectively, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. So, b'michmar bisra kumiflige. The machlokas is, are we concerned that the meat is going to get warm and get spoiled? That is what they're arguing about. Rabbi Yishmael savar chashina lemichmar bisra. Rabbi Akiva savar lo chashina lemichmar bisra. Rabbi Yishmael says, yes, we're concerned that after you offer that if you slaughter the Korban Pesach too early, well, then the meat can kind of, if you're only going to be, it's Shabbos, so you're only going to be roasting it after Shabbos. Now, if we bump up the afternoon offering to 7.5 hours into the day, so that we could then offer the Korban Pesach as early as possible, well, the Korban Pesach might end up getting rancid by the time you roast it that night. So, since Rabbi Yishmael is concerned about the Korban Pesach getting spoiled, so he says, look, there's no need to bump up the afternoon offering, rather just offer the afternoon offering at the regular time, slaughtered at 8.5 hours, offered at 9.5 hours, do the Korban Pesach after that. Rabbi Akiva is not concerned about the Korban Pesach getting spoiled by the time you come around to roasting it, and therefore he says, look, you could bump up the afternoon offering to 7.5 hours into the day, slaughter it at 7.5 hours, offer it at 8.5 hours, then you could start working on the Korban Pesach and have more time for the Korban Pesach, and then by the time you roast it on Saturday night, it'll still be just fine. Now, the Gemara says, but if that's the case, that we're not concerned about the Korban Pesach becoming rancid becoming spoiled by the time you offer it on Saturday night, well then, so then why not, Rabbi Akiva, why not bump it up as much as possible, right? Rabbi Akiva, if we want, it's Erev Pesach, it's also Shabbos, there's a lot to do, or whatever, there's a lot of Korban Pesachs to do. There's no reason why we should be pushing off the afternoon offering as late as we can. There's no nadarim, there's no nadafos, it's Shabbos, and we're not concerned about the meat getting spoiled. So why not just offer the afternoon offering as early as possible, 6.5 hours into the day? You'll have more time for the Korban Pesach. So kasavim musafim kodmin levazichin. Well, because Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that we mentioned earlier in the Machlokas, so we said that his opinion is that you have to do the Korban Musaf first, and then the Bazichin. So, Avadu the Musafin b'sheish, so therefore you do the Korban Musaf at 6 hours, Uvazichin b'sheva, then you burn the frankincense at 7 hours into the day, V'avadei the Samad b'sheva v'mechza, and then you can offer the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, and you still have an extra hour now, where you bumped up to the afternoon offering to 7.5 hours, and you offer it at 8.5 hours, and now you have an extra hour from the normal way. I mean, normally you would do 8.5 and 9.5 hours respectively. Now you're doing 7.5 and 8.5 hours. So you get an extra hour for to manage all of the Korban Pesachs, and that is Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Now, for a third and final explanation of the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, Maskif l'Rabba Bar'ula Midi Kisidro B'chol Kachsidro B'Shabbos Be'erev HaPesach Divrei Rabbi Yishmael Katani. So Rabbi Bar'ula says, it doesn't say anywhere in that cryptic brisa that just like they offer the Korban Pesach, just like they offer the afternoon offering during the week, that's how they offer the afternoon offering on Shabbos, that's Erev Pesach, according to Rabbi Yishmael. No. Kachsidro b'Shabbos stama katani. It's not talking about Shabbos, the Erev Pesach that falls out on Shabbos. No. It's talking about a regular Shabbos. So this is what the Bryce is talking about. The machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva is not talking about Erev Pesach that falls on a Shabbos, as we've been assuming up until now. Where am I? This is what the Bryce is saying. Kesidro b'chol de alma, just like we generally do during the week, i.e., slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours and then offer it at 9.5 hours. Kach sidro b'Shabbos. That's also what you do on Shabbos in general. Meaning, on a regular Shabbos, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day, and you offer it at 9.5 hours into the day, just like every other day of the week. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, that is Rabbi Yishmael's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer, whereas Rabbi Akiva says no, Kesidro be'erev Pesach da alma, kach sidro b'Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva disagrees according to Rabbi Bar'ula, and he says no, every week of the year, i.e. every Shabbos of the year, we slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day, just like we do on Erev Pesach in general. Now our Mishnah, which is talking about something completely different, it's talking about what do you do when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, and we're saying that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. Everyone's going to agree with that. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, everyone agrees, because everyone agrees that on Erev Pesach, in general, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours and offer it at 8.5 hours. So they say, look, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, it's no different. You're going to slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. That's great. However, our machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel in the Brisa, talking about something different. It's talking about just regular Shabbos. What time do you offer the afternoon korban on a regular Shabbos? Rabbi Shmuel says, just like you do it on a regular weekday, at 8.5 hours into the day, you slaughter the afternoon offering, and at 9.5 hours into the day, you offer it. Rabbi Akiva says, no, actually on a regular Shabbos, we treat it like Erev Pesach, like a regular Erev Pesach, which is that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day and offer it at 8.5 hours into the day. Now, b'maika miflagei, what is the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva? It's the question is of, like I mentioned earlier, this question of, on Shabbos, there's no voluntary korbanos that are being offered in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, as Rava explained initially, the only reason why we don't offer the korban tamid Shabbat Arbaim, the afternoon offering in general, at 6.5 hours into the day is because, well, there's other korbanos that we have to offer in the Beis HaMikdash, and once we offer the afternoon offering, we can't offer any of those other korbanos, so we push it off until 8.5 hours into the day. However, technically on Shabbos, when there's none of these other offerings, why not just offer the afternoon offering earlier? So the answer for that is, well, maybe we're concerned that if on Shabbos you offer the afternoon offering earlier, then maybe during the week you'll make a mistake and offer the afternoon offering earlier, and then you won't be able to offer any offerings after that. So therefore we say, look, just don't rock the boat, and every day during the week, Shabbos, no difference, always do it at, slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day and offer it at 9.5 hours into the day. So Rabbi Shmuel Savar Gazvin and Shabbos Atuchos. So Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is that exactly, that we don't want to rock the boat, and therefore slaughter the afternoon offering on Shabbos at the same time you do during the week at 8.5 hours. Slaughter it, 9.5 hours, offer it. Rabbi Akiva Savar, whereas Rabbi Akiva says Lo Gazvinun. He says, look, we're not concerned, and therefore, since on Shabbos there's no Nadarim and Nadavos, you can do the afternoon offering earlier. We're not concerned that you're going to mess up during the week. Well, if we're not concerned about making a mistake regarding the week, so since there's no Nadarim and Nadavos on Shabbos, you may as well bump up the afternoon offering to 6.5 hours into the day. Why only 7.5 hours? So, well, as we said earlier, Rabbi Akiva's opinion would be that you got to do the korban musaf before the bazichin, and therefore musafim b'sheish, vazichin b'sheva, v'avid la the tamid b'zayin b'mechza, and you'll do the korban tamid at 7.5 hours. You'll slaughter it at 8.5 hours. You will offer it. That is the machlokas according to Rabbi Bar Ula, that Rabbi Shmuel says on a regular Shabbos you offer the korban tamid shobin arbaim, you slaughter it at 8.5 hours and offer it at 9.5 hours. Rabbi Akiva says that on a regular Shabbos you would slaughter it at 7.5 hours, offer it at 8.5 hours. Meisvei, the Gemara asks a kasha on Abaye. I believe it's a kasha. Is it a kasha on Abaye? I thought so. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. Oh no, it's actually a support for Abaye. Here we go. Meisvei. We have a kasha. Kasha on somebody. Let's go weiter. Tamid kol shana kula. Okay, so the korban tamid every day of the year. Karev kil chaso is offered like it's halacha, which is nishchat b'shmona v'mechza v'karev b'tes v'mechza. Okay, so generally you slaughter the korban pesach. No, generally you slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours, and you offer it at 9.5 hours. Uve'erev pesach. Now on erev pesach, nishchat b'zayin v'mechza v'karev b'ches v'mechza. Okay, no chidushim yet, right? So on a regular erev pesach, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours. You offer it at 8.5 hours. Chalios b'Shabbos. If erev pesach is on Shabbos, ki chalios b'sheni b'Shabbos. Well, we treat it as though it fell out on Monday, i.e., that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, offer it at 8.5 hours when erev pesach is Shabbos. Div Rabbi Shmuel, that is Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer kisidjo be'erev pesach. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says that we treat erev pesach that falls out on Shabbos like erev pesach. Not clear what he's saying, but it's certainly clear what Rabbi Yishmael is saying, which is that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, offered at 8.5 hours when Erev Pesach is on Shabbos. So it's pretty clear, like Abaye, who says just that according to Rabbi Shmuel, on Erev Pesach, if it falls on Shabbos, you're going to slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, offered at 8.5 hours. So that's perfect according to Abaye, El Rava Kasha. But it's a question on Rava, who says that according to Rabbi Shmuel, you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours and offer it at 9.5 hours whenever Pesach falls out on Shabbos. So Amalach Rava will respond to you, Lo tema kichol b'sheni b'Shabbos, elema kisheni b'Shabbos de alma. Okay, so says Rava. Okay, interesting solution, but he says, look, just change things around. Don't say that when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, it's like Erev Pesach falls out on Monday. Rather say it's like any other Monday, i.e. that you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day, offer it at 9.5 hours into the day. That would be Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. That's how Rava makes this brisa make sense according to him. Okay, Meisvei. Now we have another kasha. This time it's on Abaye. Chalios b'Shabbos. If Erev Pesach falls out to be on Shabbos, Kesidro kol hashana kula divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Well, it's going to be like the entire year, right? Meaning, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, no difference. You're going to offer the afternoon offering like you do every other day of the year. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, that's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, i.e. slaughtered at 8.5 hours, offered at 9.5 hours. Rabbi Akiva Omer Kesidro b'Erev Pesach, whereas Rabbi Akiva says that it's like Erev Pesach. Now, B'Shlomo l'Rava nicha. So I understand according to Rava, that's great. Rava says, according to Rabbi Shmuel, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours, you offer it at 9.5 hours. That seems to be exactly what he's saying. El Abaye kasha, but according to Abaye, it's a question, because he would say that according to Rabbi Shmuel, you would offer the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, and you would slaughter it at 7.5 hours and offer it at 8.5 hours when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. So Amalach Abaye, so Abaye will respond to you, Lo tema kisidro kol hashana. Don't say that according to Rabbi Shmuel, it means that you would offer the afternoon offering like you would every day of the year, slaughtered at 8.5 hours, offered at 9.5 hours. Ella, rather, tema kisidro kol hashanim kulan. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. No, rather say, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, you treat the afternoon offering like all the other years, i.e. like you would, no different than you would do the Korban Pesach, the Erev Pesach any other year, when it falls out during the week, i.e. slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours, offer it at 8.5 hours. Rabbi Akiva Omer, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, Kisidro Erev Pesach, Shchalios b'Shabbos, whereas Rabbi Akiva would say, no, you would treat it like Erev Pesach, that Erev Pesach falls out on Friday, which is that you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours, offer it at 7.5 hours. Okay. Fine. That is how Abaye makes that price. It makes sense according to him. Wow. Okay. Well, that kind of wraps that up for now. That was kind of the three-way machlokas between Abaye, Rava, and Rabbi Bar Ula about how to understand the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Wow, a lot of things that we had to hold in our head over there. Now, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Minayin shelo yeh davar kodem b'tamid shel shachar. How do we know that there should not be any offerings offered before the morning offering is offered? Talmud Omer, therefore the pasuk says, V'arich aleh ha'ola, that you will organize on it the ola. My Talmudah, how do we learn that from there? Amar Rava ha'ola, ola rishona. That the korban tamid, that the ola saboker, the morning tamid, comes first. So nothing comes before the morning offering. The first thing you offer is the morning offering, then you can do all the other offerings. How do we know that there are no offerings that are offered after the afternoon offering? That once you offer the afternoon offering, that's it. That you will burn on it the fats of the shlamim. My Talmudah, how do we learn that from there? So Abaye says, Aleh shlamim v'al chaver shlamim. That on it, on the morning offering, you can offer shlamims afterwards, but not on its friend, i.e. not on the afternoon offering. Meaning, don't be offering any korban shlamims once the afternoon offering is offered. Maskif la Rava. Rava asks a kasha on Abai. He says, Eim Shlomim Hudulo Nakriv Ha'olos Nakriv. But if you're saying basically in the context of Shlomim, so I can make the argument that, okay, after the afternoon offering, you don't offer any Korban Shlomims. What about a Korban Ola? Maybe I can offer a Korban Ola after the afternoon offering. So Ella Amarava Hashlomim Alea Hashleim Kol HaKorbanos Kulon. No, it means Alea Hashleim, that complete all of the Korbanos on the morning offering, implying don't be completing any korbanos after the afternoon offering, meaning bring the morning offering and then you can do all of your other offerings, but that doesn't apply to the afternoon offering. The afternoon offering, once it's offered, no more korbanos until the next day. Alright, well, that was the afternoon ches. It ended up being, I guess, a little bit technical. It's funny, it didn't strike me as being that technical when I was learning it, but I guess there was a lot of details we had to hold in our head. Okay. So let's do a little bit of a review over here at Daf Nun Ches of Masechta Pesachim. So we started, of course, the new perek of Tamid Nishchat, where we start talking about korbanos, and we started off in the Gemara saying what's the source for slaughtering the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours and offering it at 9.5 hours. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that while the pasuk says Beino Arbayim, divide the afternoon into 2 parts, 2.5 hours at the beginning, 2.5 hours at the end, with 1 hour for offering the korban in the middle. Rava says that actually we learn it out from the fact that the earliest time that you could really offer the afternoon offering is from 6.5 hours into a day. And we push it off in general though till 8.5 hours into a day, just so that it gives us extra time to offer the Nidarim and Nidavos and other things that we want to offer in the Beis HaMikdash, because once the afternoon offering is offered, you can no longer offer any korbanos. Okay? Now, what do we do when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos? So we had all sorts of different opinions. So we had a three-way machlokus between Abai, Rava, and Rabba bar Ula. So Abai said, right now, they're all explaining machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. So according to Abai, Rabbi Yishmael says that when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, Rabbi Yishmael says that you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours and offer it at 8.5 hours. Rabbi Akiva says that you slaughter the afternoon offering at 6.5 hours and offer it at 7.5 hours. And the machlokas between them is that, well, they both want you to be able to offer the afternoon offering as early as possible, but we're going to say that according to Rabbi Akiva, you could first offer the frankincense and then offer the korban musaf afterwards at 6 hours, which means that already by 6.5 hours you could be working on the Talmud Shabbein Arbaim. Whereas according to Rabbi Yishmael, no, first you have to do the musaf and only then the frankincense, which means that you can only start getting around to the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day. Rava says that according to Rabbi Yishmael, you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 8.5 hours into the day and offer it at 9.5 hours into the day when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. According to Rabbi Akiva, you would slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5 hours into the day, offer it at 8.5 hours. And the machlokas there is, are we concerned that the meat of the Korban Pesach is going to get spoiled by the time that meaning get warm, which will cause it to spoil by the time that you're going to roast it after Shabbos? Rabbi Yishmael is concerned about that. Therefore he says, look, there's no reason to bump up the Korban Pesach. And Rabbi Akiva is not concerned that the meat is going to spoil. Therefore he says, bump it up. So you can only bump it up as early as 7.5 hours because, according to this view, according to Rabbi Akiva, you can only do the frankincense burning after the musaf. So you do the musaf at 6, frankincense at 7. You can get started on the Talmud Shabbein Arbaim at 7.5 hours, and then do your Korban Pesach. According to Rabbi bar Ula, he says, look, the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael has nothing to do with Erev Pesach Shechalios be Shabbos. It's talking about Shabbos in general. That Rabbi Yishmael says, Shabbos in general, we offer the afternoon offering like any other day of the week, slaughtered at 8.5, offered at 9.5. Rabbi Akiva says you bump it up to 7.5 on a regular Shabbos. You slaughter the afternoon offering at 7.5, offer it at 8.5, since you don't need to be doing any Nadarim and Nedavos, so you may as well bump it up earlier. Why not till 6.5? Well, because you can only burn the frankincense after the Musaf, so the earliest practical time that you can do the afternoon offering is at 7.5 hours into the day. Fine. And the question there is, are we concerned that if you move up the afternoon offering on Shabbos, will you end up moving it up during the week? Rabbi Yishmael is concerned, therefore says just leave it on Shabbos, don't shake the boat. Rabbi Akiva says no, we're not concerned, therefore you can move it up. since there are no Nadarim and Nadavos anyways. Then at the end we got to the source for how do we know that the earliest that you can offer that the first offering in the Beis Hamikdash every day was the morning offering and the last one was the afternoon offering. Well, it says, right, v'hiktir aleh chavei ashlamim, that you offer on the Korban Tamid Shel Shachar, i.e. don't do anything before the Korban Tamid Shel Shachar. And then it also, how do we know the end? So Abai says, well, v'hiktir aleh chavei ashlamim, that on it you offer the chavei ashlamim, but not the afternoon offering, and meaning after the afternoon offering you don't offer anything. Rava says, well, that might imply that only a shlamim you're not allowed to offer after the afternoon offering. Maybe an ola, for example, you can't. So rather he says, right, alea hashlim kol korbanos kulam, that all of the korbanos are upon the morning offering, but not on the afternoon offering. After the afternoon offering, there's nothing. Well, that was Daf Nun Ches. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.